how do you define generous? I think that's a you and the Lord thing. And it's a constant like listening and like, am I being rich towards myself first? Or am I being rich towards God first?
Hi, welcome back to another week of Behind and Beyond. I'm Allison, and this week I get to sit down with Pastor Dave as we go a little bit deeper into a sermon from this past Sunday. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah,
great to have you.
Love it. One of my favorite places, favorite times during my week, so glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, so this week you spoke on generosity.
Hey, before we get there.
Oh, okay.
So I heard there was a celebrity sighting this weekend.
Who?
Somebody saw you.
Oh.
And recognized you as the...
From the podcast.
You can't tell me that story and not think I'm going to bring that up on camera.
I thought it was going to be an athlete or something. I was like, what are you talking about?
Nope. So somebody, hey, fun story. Somebody recognized Allison and tell me the phrase that they use. I think it's hilarious.
You're the podcast girl.
You're the podcast
Thank you.
girl.
Shout out to Robinson campus. I was visiting Robinson this weekend, and I love when people chat and give me questions to ask you. So it's
But I love
fun.
that, like, podcast girl. You're the podcast girl.
I would like that to be my title, actually. In fact, my email is going to, instead of saying my real job title, it's just going to say podcast girl.
Podcast girl. We could get fun. We'd probably get in trouble with titles if we messed around, but yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
I could do it for like a week or two before I got caught, maybe.
And I gave a shout out to somebody from Robinson. I probably should have asked him, but it was like spur of the moment.
Yeah.
Wayne from Robinson.
He was there this weekend.
Was he?
I saw him. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I knew exactly who he was because you said he was the Dave Crowder.
I mean, he does.
Yes.
I mean, holy cow. Counterfeit. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it was a great weekend in Robinson.
Awesome.
Actually. Yeah.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry I interrupted you.
No, that was just a surprise start there. Okay, back to generosity.
Yeah.
So this week you're talking about generosity. I thought a fun little icebreaker to get us started.
Yeah.
What is one of the dumbest things that you've spent money on?
Cars.
Oh, really? You answered that so fast.
Yeah.
You didn't have to think about it.
I have regret over vehicles that like we needed to have them or wanted to have them, and then it was a payment, and like you never win in the car game, in my opinion. So yeah, cars, dumb. Yeah.
Like, so what would you do differently now?
Think longer term, not in the immediate short term. That's what we're trying. So we have kids, right? And so I even look back when our kids started driving. Had I have thought even longer term, we would have been in a better financial position for them to, because they needed to drive. They had sports and all this kind of stuff. We could have been in a whole different position for them had I have not listened to my my want, need, that now kind of voice. So that's a really good example. You're in a much better position to be generous if that's not the voice driving your life. So yeah, cars, easy.
Like
easy
if you wouldn't
answer.
have bought as nice of a car, but like a cheaper car, or what do you mean?
I wouldn't have upgraded because it just wasn't necessary. And there's never a car that's ever really an upgrade. I mean, they are. You go from cloth to leather or whatever, or heated seats from no heated seats. But at the end of the day, all the luster wears off. The new car smell, it fades, and then you're just, I personally, and I'm a car person, like I secretly admire car salesmen, because car salespeople, because they drive a different car all the time. Like I would drive a different car all the time. I feel like life is too short to just drive one kind of car. That's part of my problem. Like I would love to try.
Funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
I care nothing about cars, so that would not, and also any
Brooke
car.
is the same way. She's like, it doesn't matter. But for me, I'm like, ooh,
That's
I'd
your
love to drive
thing.
this kind of a car. Like I haven't driven an electric car yet. They fascinate me. Like just I want to try one out.
Did you just get a truck too?
I did.
You're a truck driver now.
I have a
that
truck.
was surprising to me.
Was it?
Yeah. Joe Simonetti, someone we work with here, knows everybody. He's also really into cars. He knows every person's
Vehicle.
Really? Yes. Oh yeah. He can tell.
Yeah.
He can pull in the parking lot and
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
So he had pointed out that was your truck.
Yes.
So is this new? A truck?
This past fall. Yeah. I mean, so this was not one I regret because my Jeep was, it was starting to rust, and I was, I wasn't happy with that. That was not a good thing. So I had wanted a truck functionality. Gino runs a lawn business and does mulching and stuff like that. So there was like a dual purpose. And I'm pretty like handy project wise around the house. So yeah, it was time for a truck. People have told me I'm not a truck guy. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I am a truck guy.
You can be a truck guy.
I am one. I drove one in college.
Yeah.
That's what I drove basically all through college. And people said, what did you end up doing with that truck? I said, I put it on Brooke's finger.
Whoa.
Sold the truck, used that for engagement money. And my first job, I had a car. I was an admissions rep for Geneva College, and you got a car with that. So it was like, it was like the perfect deal.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, any car I've ever gotten, I pretty much ding or scratch up almost immediately. Yeah. So it's kind of like I can't even, usually it's not even my fault, to be fair. I just live in the city, usually. Some of the time it is my fault.
Yeah, there is a bit.
But I do feel like there's multiple, I mean, I just get in fender benders kind of often. Or one of my brand new cars got stolen one time and taken.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you know that story.
No.
It got totally... so I just came outside one day to go to work and my car was gone and it had been stolen. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's not good.
No.
That's like
they found it a few days later while some
that's Grand Theft Auto, isn't it?
Yeah, some teenagers took it. The police found the car as it was being driven somewhere in Bloomfield, and the kids jumped out of the car while it was in drive.
What? They thought they could escape that way?
They did. They did escape that way. So they got away. Caught. They left their math homework in our car, though. So
no. Did they get their times tables correct? What was the math?
It wasn't finished, surprisingly. It didn't seem like their number one priority to get the math homework done.
Wow.
Yeah. So our car got. It was like the worst case scenario where it gets like almost totaled, but not actually. So then.
That's such a bummer.
Yeah.
Insurance is so. When I get those papers to figure out, like, here's your policy, I'm like, I don't understand. How much does this cost?
Yeah.
That's all I look at.
So they fixed it, and I would do, like, everyone's listening, but air quotes, fixed it. So it was kind of like, after that, some of it.
It's not the same.
It doesn't. Every time I go to lock it, it sounds like a machine gun. It's like...
Is it your still car now?
Huh? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had it. I still...
Oh, you're kidding me. So this is like a recent...
No. This happened. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't care about cars. I just drive them into the ground. Okay. So we got that car when Sutton was born. So like 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And still driving it today.
That's
it's
crazy.
Still going strong
that's
here
crazy.
in this little
good for you.
CRV.
If you can do that, that's how you win, I think, with cars. That's like a Dave Ramsey, drive it into the ground. Mm-hmm. Car noises bother me.
Yeah. My husband too.
And
I don't care. I just tune it all out.
I do have friends who they are reputable mechanics, but I'm always leery of like the auto body shop because I know nothing about cars, and that is the spot where I'm going to get taken. Where I feel like, yep, you could make up a part and tell me it needs to be fixed, and here's how much it costs. I'm like, okay, I guess so.
Yeah.
So that's like my insecure area when it comes to cars.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I'm also here to ask the hard-hitting questions of you that everybody wants to know.
Let's go.
So I think inquiring minds also,
I don't
before
have
we
a
dive
number.
in, of shoes.
I don't have a number.
You know?
I knew what you were going to ask me. I knew it. I was almost like not going to say above average, but in that
moment. You should
moment.
have counted before coming in today. This is time to give an accounting of your shoes.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
I will say this. So I keep shoes for a very long period of time.
Like my cars.
I shop. How many cars do you have?
Well.
I shop sales, but sandals. You got to count grass cutting shoes.
Yeah.
You got to count winter boots. Like I said, slippers, Crocs. I don't know which service I mentioned it, but I have Crocs. Old Navy flip flops for $1. They all count. But so do the Jordans. So do the running shoes. I don't know. I didn't count.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
Maybe in some other moment.
This is your homework, and next week on the podcast,
I'm not counting. I'm not answering that question.
Who has more, you or Brooke?
Brooke. Oh, easy.
Yeah,
like
for
flip.
Sure.
I mean, if you just add in flip flops.
Yeah.
Like she has like $2 pair of flip flops, and I think one summer it was like, hey, let's buy 6 pair of these, like for every color.
Yeah.
So that's 6 pair of shoes. Yeah. And like the dress shoes. I will say this: her shoes cost way less than my shoes. Right? Like she can buy a pair of shoes for $15 at Target or whatever. So that's like a different.
So she can have more.
It's not. Well, it's apples to oranges. But she has more.
Yeah.
But and here's the other thing too. I'm 46. I haven't changed shoe sizes since 8th grade. Like, so I have some some shoes, and I keep my shoes really well. I'm justifying at this point.
Go ahead, keep going. Yes, you're just digging your own. Oh.
Next question.
I will say my husband's gotten super into shoe care as well, because he teaches in the inner city, and he was like learned all about not creasing your shoes and stuffing. I don't know any of this stuff. I don't take that much like care of mine. But.
It's the crease in the toe box. I don't worry about that.
Yeah.
I started to I wear my shoes out. A lot of times I would bring them to a building, but I watch the weather, but I wear them out because I'm supposed to wear them.
Yeah.
And then when they're worn out, you have to replace them or just use other shoes. But yeah.
Okay.
I knew you were going to ask that question. As soon as you started, I'm like, oh, here we go.
I was surprised.
That's all right.
You were prepared.
I wasn't prepared, but
you could just see it percolating.
Maybe.
Okay. So we're going to dive into the practice of generosity, but can we kind of maybe take a moment to step back? So Amanda set this up well for us at the very beginning, maybe. So we're like 4 weeks in now. And I think her thesis was, I'd written it down, but this idea that to just claim the name of Christ is not the same as following the ways of Jesus. And so we're kind of walking into the practices of what it means to follow Jesus. But I just kind of want to backtrack on that, because I think if you in isolation maybe are just taking each week, it could be easy to think like, oh, it's just more I have to do. And I don't think that's the heart. The heart is obviously an invitation to following Jesus in a new way. So could you maybe just speak to that a little bit more? What are we trying to accomplish, and what's the invitation even into following Jesus or trying a new practice?
Yeah.
I think, sorry, last thing I'll say, if there's a practice you're already really strong in, then okay, that's great. You don't need to feel like this sense of like guilt or I have to do more and more and more, right? So it's just kind of an invitation to reconsider where am I maybe not strong or
Yeah, I think discipleship it's always a balance. It's like a pendulum that goes back and forth between like obedience or just rest in his grace and just trust. Like I got to do something, or I just need to be with Jesus. And I think it's both. And so these practices are things Jesus did. And I think I can't not acknowledge in this series that sometimes you have to put something into practice in order to first experience it. And so there is like hey, walk this out. Hey, try it. I am confident Jesus is going to meet all of us there when we try his ways. The danger is it becoming all about performance and all about checking a box and all about, hey, look what I did. Now here's your end of that bargain. The practices are supposed to lead us to experience the abundant life, which is the dependent life. They should put us in a position. I say this a lot, probably haven't said it in a while. When it comes to faith, the dependent version of you is the best version of you. So these should put us into position to depend on God more. Next week, we're going to talk about fasting. Pure example of that. So I don't think you can ever fall on one side of the coin completely because you'll ignore the other side. And here's what I'd say. If you're doing this well, awesome. But I still think it's worth a look under the hood. Have I just been doing the same exact thing for a long period of time? Am I just saying I'm doing it well, and have I actually looked at it? Because generosity is an ambiguous word on purpose. Because I don't know. Like generous is different for a lot of different people in a lot of different situations. So these practices aren't meant to just be the 11 steps to following Jesus.
Right.
These are they're his ways, and they're supposed to be something we embody as our ways, because ultimately it gives so generosity is one of those ones that a lot of people can argue theology, right? Can argue religious practices. You can argue, but my faith tradition and my faith tradition, and I grew up in a church, and like disagree pretty violently a lot of times. It's hard to argue generosity. Like when someone really gives generously, that's a demonstration of love. Like it's a beautiful, maybe unrequired, unexpected demonstration of love, and that's Jesus. And generosity to me is one of those ones when we really embody this, it gives the world a picture of who Jesus is and his love, that's amazingly generous and lavish for us. So this should lead us to presenting a picture of Christ, representing him to the world. So
yeah. And I like the way so not performance, but dependence, I think is like,
always.
Yeah. It's about depending on the Lord.
But sometimes there is like a, hey, you gotta do this. You gotta try it, and you gotta stay with it. A lot of people I've talked to, they're like, I've tried reading the Bible, it doesn't work for me. Keep trying. It's his way. And like when we step into this, the longer we do it over time, the more we really experience that transformation that comes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So you covered a lot of material, I feel like, in a short time. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to?
Yeah, there was a fourth point, and not ironically, I got it out on Saturday night. So this was a hard sermon. This was like always talking about money. There's going to be some frustration, or there's that thought that the church just wants my money, right? And I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that's true at Northway, but there's just that sort of thing out there. So backstory before this, we do that run through on Thursdays. This was the most awful run through I've experienced in a long time.
Just like you were unprepared, or what do you mean? Or not unprepared, but just it didn't feel like it was coming together?
Sometimes you carry a sermon, and like especially carrying the money sermon, the one where we talk about money, which is always guarded and tense, maybe a little bit. I went into, here's what I realized. So we go through the run through, and it was just Amanda and John. Billy Bob wasn't able to be there. He had something else going on. So it was two of them, and they gave me a lot of feedback. I didn't want feedback this week. I like at the end, I was mad. Like John Riley asked me at one point, he goes, so Dave, you keep asking us if there's anything more, because that's the right question to ask. I just wanted them to say, no, it's good. Because I wanted to be done with the sermon. And at one point, John, when he asked me, he goes, Dave, how are you with everything that we've shared with you? And I said to him, are you talking about how am I with you guys, or with what you said? Because I told Amanda later on, I was like, because I wanted to say, like, I don't like either of you right now. And I wanted to end the Zoom call like immediately. I was frustrated because I just wanted to be done with the sermon, but the Lord wasn't done with me in that sermon. And so there was still more process to go through. So anyways, leading back to the fourth point I didn't get to.
But you are now, just to clear the air, good with John and Amanda.
We're great. Yeah. There is that run through can feel humiliating. Yeah. Because you're just putting something out the first time and hearing responses, and something that sounded great in your head, it doesn't always sound out verbally, right? And so it's a delicate
Well, it takes a lot of humility for you guys. And I think for you guys to keep working towards it to make each other better. Like, I think that's such a cool partnership.
There's a lot of trust there. Yeah. Everybody's great.
Yeah. And Billy Bob too.
Yeah. Everybody's great in that space, but it's a difficult hour, but a necessary hour. So anyways, the fourth point, when Jesus says the phrase rich toward God, that phrase, original language, actually means to cause someone else to have abundance, to cause them to be prosperous. I don't know if you've ever, I don't want to preach this, I just want to talk about this. Have you ever received a gift from someone that has a string attached to it?
Sure.
To cause someone to prosper means giving without strings. It's theirs. Sometimes we have strings attached to our generosity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you know the no strings attached phrase? Where it comes from? 1700s.
Oh, I was going to say NSYNC. I don't know.
Yes. Bye.
Yeah.
1700s, marketplace. People were buying fabric. If it had a piece of string attached to it, it meant it had a condition. It wasn't like free and clear. And so over time, it became if it has a string attached, it means there's conditions or expectations attached to this. I think we have to check our hearts. When Jesus says to be rich towards God, our giving towards God, toward the work of the kingdom, the church, I believe he's calling us to give without strings, without an expectation of a specific blessing from him, without a desire of control of completely where it goes and who gets to use it and how it's directed and what that missions group does with it, with some measure of preference of, well, these are the projects or the things I support. And so that's a challenging piece. I don't know if you're tracking with me.
Yeah,
but it's literally so Jesus in John, it's recorded, he's talking about his own generosity, his life. He says, unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it will never really bear fruit. Our giving is I believe, supposed to be like seeds that is given without strings, and it has to die. We have to let it go completely. Our job is to give, not to have strings so we control everything. Sometimes we disguise that and call it, well, I'm being a good steward. I believe we're called to give. Now, I don't think we're supposed to give towards people like people that are irresponsible with money, but here's where that hit me. Sometimes I have a string attached to my giving, thinking, God, okay, if I increase it, you'll increase the overall giving at Northway. That's the unique pressure in my role. And that when I said that I wasn't done with the sermon, that's where I had to, like, Thursday night really sit with, oh Lord, I'm sorry. I need to give, not expecting you to then say, and then as you give, I'll make sure Northway is. I'm not in charge of that.
Yeah.
I'm not in control of that. That is not a real or fair responsibility for me to bear just because of the title I have, right? Podcast girl, right? That's your title. Does that make sense? So I think there's a piece of that for us to really look at and really guard our hearts against strings attached to our giving. And that's all generosity. Sometimes we're generous to our kids so that it can control our kids. And that's really not causing them to fully be prosperous. Yeah. So it's something to wrestle with. So that was the fourth point. I didn't have time to. I remember looking down at the clock. I think I saw 32 minutes and I was like, there's no chance. So don't even go there. Yeah. Sunday morning.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I do think I'm thinking even just taking this outside of the school, outside of the church, I mean, like the way that you might donate to a school or a specific fund in order to even elevate yourself within that community, or
to get your name on it,
to get your voice heard. If I give this much money to this, then they'll do this other thing I want.
Yeah. Generosity is a heart act. Because it's the antithesis of greed. And so, I'm not saying this right now to condemn anybody who's listening. I just think we're supposed to really reflect and really consider, what does generosity really look like? I don't believe there are strings attached to it.
Well, yes. And
because Jesus didn't give his life with strings.
Yeah.
It was like and now you choose how you respond. Like, respond to this generous gift. I think he gave his life going to the cross knowing not everyone would respond. Not everyone would receive. So he really, there were no strings attached. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By that?
Yeah. Well, I thought it was really interesting when you were even talking about I loved how you broke down the American dream and kind of the history of that as well. And the way that has now kind of been co-opted into just more. And this idea, I think you had said, of upward mobility is really how we would define it now. The American dream is just upward mobility. Yeah. And as you're teaching that, I just kept thinking, but the way of Jesus is downward mobility, that he kind of did the opposite. Like, he just gave and gave.
So he increased. And that's what he did.
Yeah.
I tried to say that at the beginning, and I don't know if I gave enough time to it. He didn't just teach generosity. He embodied it. The whole, I don't want to use the word experiment, but the whole endeavor of leaving heaven and coming here was completely generous. Like, we didn't earn that. We already had the law. There was already a way. There was a sacrificial system, but he even made a better way, and an even more intimate way, so that that veil could be torn in the temple, and we could have access and experience the presence of God. Complete generosity. He physically embodied it. And then if you just think about the way when you read about Jesus, it feels like his ministry was constantly giving of himself to people, like time and attention, correction. Sometimes feeding people. Like, they could have sent them home. Yeah. But the loaves and the fishes, because they were hungry. And so you give them something to eat. That's a call to be generous. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. So even within that, I was thinking about kind of this upward mobility and I guess even the consumption of, so even if I have all the money in the world to be generous, in the sense of like, maybe what the world would say is generous, that it looks like I'm giving a lot of money. There's still this just American drive, I think, to consume more and more and more. And, even it doesn't take, I can just flip open Instagram and I'm immediately
the appetite's fed.
Influenced by everything on Amazon I can buy in like 2 seconds, that I definitely most probably need, but don't actually need. And so I wonder how you think as believers we should think about our consumption, what we consume, how much we consume, and maybe how the impacts of our consumption impacts people and also impacts our environment. And how as believers should we think about that?
Well, I think we've been called from the very beginning to steward the earth well. And so I think we should be responsible as consumers. I think that's a challenge because I don't think we know, like the pair of shoes I have on right now, I don't know who made them, how they were made. I don't understand all of the products about that, but I think there's like a step one is if you're knowing that this is bad for our world, for our physical environment, I think we're called to be wise stewards. I don't think we're called to be reckless, just throw it away. Like, I think we should be aware of what a landfill is actually filled with. All the stuff we wanted, all the stuff that we needed. So yeah, I believe we bear a responsibility to the earth as stewards. Consumption, I think we bear a responsibility to the next generation in like helping them quench the appetite by us not always driven by consumption, by more. And so case in point of the golf clubs that I have, if I just go buy another pair immediately, just because I want a newer set and I think it'll fix my broken swing, like what am I teaching my kids in that moment? Just go get more, go get another one. This is just what you do. At some point, the cycle just has to get broken.
Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking about it even today. Something as silly as like a pair of socks that I had a hole in them, and I was like, I'm just going to throw these away. And then it was just, well, I could actually take the time to mend these. And it was just like an interesting. Yeah. That's such a small thing, but it was an interesting kind of thought experiment in my own life to think about how quickly I am to just toss things or consume more and more rather than like our coffee cups that are even on the table. Yeah.
I mean, there is a cost to using this. Boy, it's convenient. I think that's sometimes what drives our consumptive, is that the right word? Behavior is it's just convenient and we're so fast. Like I just was thinking, so I work out of our Swickley location weekly now, on Tuesdays when we film, and I probably should just get a coffee mug here. Why do I have to use this every single week? Because there is a cost to this. And goodness, do you know how many coffee mugs I have in our cabinet at home?
World's best pastor, coffee mugs.
No, not true, and don't have it, right? But you get what I'm saying? Like we have plenty of, and I think it's a heart matter. I think there's like, it's really considering that, God, am I really being a steward, or am I being driven by a consumptuous appetite? That's a complex question.
It is. Yeah.
Because
it's
like even like about this device right here, like how was it produced and what did it take to produce
the
this?
device being your phone for those who are listening.
Yeah, my phone. Yeah, I apologize, everybody. Shout out to the audio only crew. You're driving to work right now. Keep your eyes on the road. But yeah, like all of it. We just expect it.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like time is flying, as it always does in conversations with you. I've got loads I could keep, because I just always find this so fascinating and interesting. Like
it's a heart thing.
It is. Yeah. And
there's no standard for all of us. I mean, I do believe, again, Jesus endorsed the tithe when he was talking to, the religious leaders and the Pharisees. He said, this you ought to have done while also not neglecting the other things. But how do you define generous? I think that's a you and the Lord thing. And it's a constant like listening and like, am I being rich towards myself first, or am I being rich towards God first? So here, I'll give you an example. I used to drive a Jeep, and I had a hardtop. It was stored when I traded my Jeep in. The hardtop was stored on the roof of my garage. I've tried to sell it like multiple times, right? It has good value on it. I thought I priced it really well. No dice. I just relisted it, and I got someone that they bit. They want to buy it, and they offered me half. Like, so what do I do in that moment? I just preached on generosity, and then I looked the person up in their profile, and they're in ministry. They're a pastor. Like, what do I do? Like, what do you know what I mean? It's in so many different facets. And then, so with the half of that price, what do I do with that money? Like, that's literally, Brooke and I just said, like, we need to pray about this. Like, cause this is additional income that was sitting in the roof of my garage, hoisted up. It's purely unexpected, unaccounted for money. Do we just go buy something we want? Do we use it to bless people? In all those moments where you're longing to be generous, I think a lot of people have said, I wish I had more so I could give more. So right now I have more. And that's the challenge of this, is in relationship with the Lord, be asking and start to understand. There was something I didn't get to. We really do believe everything we get is always all for us. I don't think that's true. I think we're supposed to be conduits, especially of financial resources. So this money that's about to come in, unless the guy backs out, and you know how that works. I'm hoping he doesn't back out. But this money that comes in, like, okay, Lord, what are we supposed to do with this? That was my hope and my prayers, that we start to view, am I being rich towards God first? To have that question entertain or enter into the equation even more than, so what do I want? What can I buy now? So that's a real life practical example where I've been challenged with it. I mean, literally Sunday night, I'm home and I'm processing, and I checked and I'm like, oh, the guy wants to buy it. So.
Yeah, we've been having a similar conversation in our house, because we just have just random stuff in our basement that is just taking up space that we're like, we've been trying to sell on Facebook Marketplace or whatever that isn't selling. And I'm like, we could just donate. Like, I don't know. At this point,
can give it.
I can give it. I don't know, so. But okay, just to wrap up our time,
Did you have one more question you wanted to get to?
Well, I've got like many more questions.
I
don't know how long you want to
today.
go. Yeah. But I'm trying to get to a practical place. So
Okay.
I have a lot more like theoretical things that I just think are interesting to talk to you about, but let's maybe land in this practical place. I think when you're teaching to a lot of people. So you kind of have to hit maybe the median and try to think through, this is what the majority of our congregation might be feeling around the subject matter. But I think there are people in our communities who are struggling to financially in a way that's like, where's the next meal coming from? Or how am I going to pay my water bill this month?
Right.
How do I think about being generous when I'm really struggling to take care of my family? What would you say to them?
Generosity. So this parable that Jesus taught, for the majority of us, I would say a big area where we can grow in is generosity when it comes to our finances. It's not the only way we can be generous, right? I would say your basic human needs, because he even said, like, if we have food to eat, this is that Timothy passage, if we have food to eat and we have clothing, then we'll be content. But if you don't have food, like, we can be generous with our time. We can be generous with our attention. We can serve the church. We can serve kingdom-oriented things and be rich towards God. I also didn't want to say that in the sermon, because we talked about that. There's lots of forms of generosity. Yeah. Because a vast, big group of us will sometimes, I'd rather just give my time than my money.
Sure.
And Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart is also.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be some discomfort. There needs to be some like surrender is not always comfortable, right? Getting like downward mobility is not comfortable. I'm not flexible physically. Like I'm like, so like bending down is like, it creaks and it hurts. So yeah, I would just say there's not supposed to be guilt and compulsion around this subject. But at the same time, I want to say what Jesus told us to pay attention to. And he taught a lot about money. And so I think we have to like settle it in our hearts. Someone came up and they asked me about their tithe and directing most of it to the church, but some of it elsewhere. And I told them what I believed. And I said, at the end of the day, you have to settle that with God. Paul talks about giving what we've settled in our hearts, and to do that cheerfully. I didn't agree with this person, but at the end of the day, like that, there is a thing between Allison and God that like, I have to entrust you to that. I got to point you to the things Jesus said, and then we all have to wrestle down. Dave and Brooke have to wrestle down with God and pray about it and consider it. And so long-winded, roundabout answer, there are other ways to be generous. like time, attention, service, those sorts of things too. So let's not discount those, but let's also not use those to excuse away an unwillingness to give money or to adjust lifestyle. Generosity is blocked a lot of times because we live beyond our means.
Yeah.
That's it. That's a truth that's challenging for us.
Yeah.
The American dream. So
yeah. Well, okay. Can I real fast then? Let's swing to the other end of the pendulum. Okay.
Can I express some disappointment?
Why?
We haven't talked about sports at all today, but swing the other end of the pendulum.
I was trying to think. Did it work in there? We talked about golf clubs.
I did. You're right.
Dad, sports.
You're right. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
We got it in there somehow.
Yeah, you did it. You stood up. Really congratulate yourself on a very minuscule thing. I'm kidding. I'm not disappointed.
Well, that was my final question. It was about sports.
So
how did you?
Gun.
I know you should have just. Now I can't ask that one. I'm gonna have to ask a different one, unfortunately. So sorry.
I'm not going to answer anything about sports. I want to know what was the pendulum.
Well, I just thought on the other end, there's people in our community who I think also maybe are giving kind of the standard 10%, and they are being challenged to be more generous in creative ways. How would you suggest they get started? I think sometimes people in that demographic also are like, where do I begin? How do I think about expanding generosity and maybe so it's gonna creative and unique ways?
Just two specific areas. Every yes we say in life is a no to something else. Every no we say opens up a yes to something else. So if you want to be more generous with giving your time and your service, you got to look at your schedule and say that's going to require, you can't always. So part of the American dream thinks I should be able to do all of it, right?
Yeah.
It might mean saying no to some things in the rhythm of your schedule so that you now have time. Sometimes we only say yes if it's convenient. That's not really the essence of service, right? Service is giving of ourselves in a way that pours ourselves out. Same is true financially. I think it's adjusting lifestyle and expectations and not only living below our means, but sometimes there's excess that we can say no to so that we can be more financially generous. So there's yeses and nos. And I think there's like an adjustment, and there's like I think sometimes God puts something on our heart and we stop because I can't conveniently do that. I don't think that's the right stop sign. I think then it's like, okay, Lord, can you lead me in how to do this? And I think oftentimes in my life, he's shown me yeses and nos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's always, part 2 of Behind and Beyond coming. I could keep going, I feel like, with so many questions for you, but this was really great.
Subject.
It is a big subject, and it's something I think that we think a lot about, right? So
we do.
Yeah. So I appreciate you being here and answering the questions that we got to today. Always great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Bye.